All right, let's talk about something I hear a lot. Okay. I mean, constantly I run across this when I say, I'm an ADHD coach. The response is, everyone has ADHD now. Oh, of course, you got one. You got one on me. Usually followed by some version of, well, it's because of smartphones or TikTok, or because we're all so overstimulated, or because doctors are just handing out diagnoses like Halloween candy. I thought you might like that one. Okay, let's face it. Yes, ADHD diagnoses have skyrocketed, seemingly to me in the last 5 to 7 years. It's almost like a surge. And I think a fair question to ask is, why the hell is everyone getting diagnosed? Fair. I think the everyone has ADHD now argument, trope, theory is built on a fairly massive misunderstanding of what is actually going on, which, of course, such is life today. So I thought, let us unpack it a touch. Before I get too far, I'm Viki. I coach late diagnosed ADHD women typically through the messy middle of transformation. So, oh, and also talk about my background. Come on, I've been working on it all week. Okay. First up on the docket is late onset ADHD. You know, I'm sure that you know of people that have gotten diagnosed at 30, 40, 50, even 70, and people saying, well, you must be a late bloomer. You just have ADHD that presented later in life called late onset. Pero no, though, that's actually inaccurate. They did not develop it as an adult. They have, in fact, had some form of neurodivergence. Maybe it's ADHD all along from the start. ADHD does not spontaneously appear when you're 32. Okay. It is a neurodevelopmental condition. What does that mean? Well, it means that it does always present in childhood. The DSM literally requires symptom onset before age 12. It's prepubescent. So, what's the deal? These people were missed, overlooked, dismissed, especially women, and more especially women of color. Shock and all, once again, I know, wild. Research shows that women get diagnosed with ADHD on average 4 years later than men. And even that I kind of have to laugh at because it's typically, I have found in my day to day anecdotal life, it's much longer than that, but nonetheless, and that's if they get diagnosed at all. The childhood ratio of boys to girls with ADHD is 3 to 1. And in adulthood, it's more like 1 to 1, right? So that's not simply presentation exposing itself, that is misdiagnoses and being dismissed in medical spaces, which isn't very new for women throughout history. But alas, this means that half the girls with ADHD were not on anyone's radar as kids. And as adults, many of us are playing catch up. If you were diagnosed as a child and you are a woman, good on you. Because most ADHD research was done on hyperactive little boys who couldn't sit still in class. That's what was being looked for. Whereas girls tend to internalize, mask. We became perfectionists. We became people pleasers. We looked absolutely fine and thriving on the outside while completely drowning on the inside. No one would know. And this is something I mention often, so feel free to go back in time a bit and catch some older vids for more detailed talk on that, but we'll leave it right there. So, teachers didn't refer us gals as often, okay, or ever for evaluation because we may not have been all that disruptive. We daydreamed, forgot things, fidgeted under desks, picked our cuticles and nails to slow, painful deaths. If anyone knows my anxiety nail, we held 100 open mental tabs. We struggled quietly. And when we did show symptoms, they got chalked up to anxiety, depression, mood disorders, everything else, but ADHD. No way it could be neurodivergence. That's for boys. So When a 35-year-old woman gets diagnosed today, she did not suddenly develop ADHD. She has been living with it her whole life and has found coping mechanisms and various masks to hide the truity of it all. She was finally seen when she got diagnosed. That is not late onset, that is late recognition. Okay. So that's one. Secondly, stick with me. Over the past decade or so, we have seen, I feel that I have seen this cascade effect. Kids are getting diagnosed earlier and more frequently, and it's less stigmatized. Okay, and now parents are sitting in on those diagnostic appointments, of course, hearing those symptoms read aloud, and something clicks for parent, often mom. That sounds like me, they say. So mom then decides to get evaluated too, in her 30s, 40s, 50s. Then she tells her mom, and now grandma hears about it and thinks, same. No big deal. I've lived with that my whole life. And yet a little inkling of, oh, maybe that's why I've struggled with so many of these different types of things. We're not really seeing an epidemic of new ADHD or this like surge of it new. We're seeing generations of people finally getting answers for struggles they've had all along. Right? That's just science over time. Whether they choose to use the label or not really doesn't matter. They have some reasoning as to why they may have had success amnesia, rejection sensitivity, relentless tics and quirks, and endless dopamine chase. Or maybe they realize why their coping mechanisms have been list making, color coding, or late night furniture rearranging. I'm just saying, is it me? It's me. I'm using myself as examples, obviously. But nonetheless, the science has not changed. The awareness is in the midst of changing. That's what's happening going forward. Even the new DSM is going to have new assessment parameters to assess and diagnose people within. So then there's also the smartphone argument. Aren't screens making everyone more distracted and impulsive, and so everybody has ADHD? Short answer, yes, screens affect everyone's attention. But that does not mean that everybody has ADHD. Okay, so this is not that. That is not this. I'd say it is clear that there is a combined effect of more awareness and diagnosis of neurodivergence, as well as more people using TikTok and Google to self-diagnose themselves, because I don't freaking know, our society has a bit of a label obsession, let's say. So we want to label ourselves and put it in our profiles of all of our social media. I would say here's the difference. ADHD is a chronic, pervasive pattern which shows up across multiple settings throughout the entirety of life. And it doesn't come and go based on whether or not you've deleted Instagram for a break. It is literally neurological wiring, okay? It is your makeup chemically. So screen-induced distractibility, that's situational. You can cut back on screen time and your attention can improve, okay? ADHD, it was there before you had the smartphone. It will remain after you put the smartphone down on Do Not Disturb, on grayscale, in a drawer, not to be found for months. You'll still have ADHD. So research shows that people with ADHD are more prone to phone addiction because our brains crave dopamine and screens deliver it fast. Okay, Timu? Anyway, but screens did not cause ADHD. They simply amplify that joint. Okay. Yes, heavy digital media use can worsen ADHD symptoms. They can mimic them in people who don't have ADHD, but ta-da! Here's what doctors are supposed to do. Take a thorough history, review some childhood patterns, rule out other causes. That may also be why it could be interesting to go get a diagnosis, because maybe You don't have it. So the problem isn't that ADHD is overdiagnosed. The problem is that some clinicians are sloppy with their prejudices, thinking that those with ADHD look like this. And so therefore, if you look like that, you don't have this. Assessments are often inaccessible for many, especially if we're going outside the United States, and myriad other systemic and societal reasons that go well beyond the time limit I gave myself for this episode, which we're already past the limit I gave. Okay. But I'm not done. Okay, so speaking of sloppy, I just want to talk about why so many women were missed for so long, which you may know, so you could skip, but most ADHD research, like most medical research to date, has been based on white male bodies. I'm not being judgmental or subjective. It is what it is, okay? Male presentation, male symptoms. When we're talking about girls or women, our bodies are different. Our hormones fluctuate. We live in rhythm, okay? We live in cycles. Estrogen affects our dopamine. Our ADHD symptoms get worse or better, depending on where we are in that cycle, whether we are menstrual, pregnant, postpartum, perimenopausal, menopausal, okay? There are so many more significant and intricate seasons of the female biological life, and none of that has been historically studied. None of that was considered. And so we are in the midst of this change today, right now. It's happening, right? So when a girl showed up with ADHD that looked different than the hyperactive boy model, right? She often got misdiagnosed. Anxiety, depression, the mood disorders, borderline personality, things we've talked about. Anything but ADHD. Follow me? Let me take this because I'm sounding a little yikesy. We're only now just starting to understand how ADHD presents in women because there's more funding on and for women. And shocker, it turns out that a lot of us have been walking around undiagnosed for decades, obviously. So, long story long, because your girl's loquacious and I can't stop. No, everyone does not have ADHD. A lot more people have it than we thought because for years we were only looking for one type of person. Now we are not. Our lenses are widened. The current prevalence estimate is about 5% of the population, and we all know that's probably inaccurate on the lower end. But the point is, it's not as rare as thought. All right? That's long story long. If it feels like suddenly everyone's getting diagnosed, that's simply because the people who should have been finally have the time, energy, resources, or maybe just luck of the draw, had a particular clinician that saw them a little more clearly than their previous ones. So next time someone says everyone has ADHD now, everyone has ADHD now, you're just another one, of course you got diagnosed, you can politely correct them. Not everyone, just the people who've actually had it all along and were disregarded. That's it. That's the long and short of it. Okay. Well, I'm under 15 minutes. I'm going to take it. So know this. The science hasn't changed. The stereotypes are just starting to crack. And it's about damn time. So catch you next week. Ciao for now.